I give.
Remember when a $3 million movie about out-of-control fraternity brothers accidentally rewrote the entire comedy playbook? That was Animal House. Released by Universal Pictures in 1978, this low-budget gamble turned a cast of mostly unknowns, led by John Belushi, Tim Matheson, John Vernon, and Donald Sutherland, into a full-blown cultural phenomenon. It grossed over $141 million, launched careers, and somehow convinced an entire generation that wrapping themselves in a bedsheet and calling it a toga was a legitimate Saturday night plan. But behind the food fights, the toga chants, and the absolute chaos, there are stories most people never heard, and some of them are wilder than anything the Deltas ever pulled on screen. Today we're counting down 15 weird facts about Animal House, and stick around for number one, because the way this movie ends created a formula comedies are still copying nearly 50 years later. Before we get started, hit that like button and subscribe. It keeps these retro deep dives coming every week. All right, let's check out this frat house. Number 15, the $20 million mistake. Universal Pictures wanted nothing to do with Animal House. Studio president Ned Tannen read the script and hated it, called it vulgar, dismissed co-writer Harold Ramis as unproven, and made it clear the project was going nowhere. Then Tannen gave John Landis one final condition: get a real movie star attached, or the conversation's over. So, Landis called in a favor from an old friend, Donald Sutherland.
I'm waiting for reports from some of you. I'm not joking. This is my job.
The two had known each other since Landis worked as a crew member on Kelly's Heroes back in 1970. Sutherland was a legitimate film star. MASH, The Dirty Dozen, Clute, the kind of name that made a studio stop saying no and start writing checks. Sutherland said yes. A small part, Professor Jennings, about 2 days on set. The moment his name hit the paperwork, Universal approved the $3 million budget. No Sutherland, no movie. And here's where it gets painful. The studio offered Sutherland a choice. His day rate, reportedly around $25,000 to $35,000, or 2% of the film's gross. Sutherland didn't think the movie had a chance. He took the guaranteed cash. Then Animal House pulled in over $141 million on a $3 million budget. Director John Landis later estimated Sutherland left close to $20 million on the table when you factor in the ancillary revenue. And that's before decades of home video, cable reruns, and licensing piled on top. The man who saved the movie from ever getting made also left millions behind because he didn't think anyone would show up. That's the kind of math that follows you around forever. Number 14, Belushi was running two careers at once. While filming Animal House, Belushi was still a full-time cast member on Saturday Night Live, so naturally, he decided to do both at the same time, across the entire country. The schedule went like this. Monday through Wednesday, Belushi was in Eugene, Oregon, inhaling cafeteria food, terrorizing extras, and turning Bluto Blutarsky into a comedy legend. Wednesday night, he'd get on a plane. Thursday morning, he's walking into 30 Rock for SNL rehearsals. Friday, more rehearsals. Saturday night, live television in front of millions. Sunday, back on a plane to Oregon. Repeat. Every week for roughly 7 weeks straight, from late October through mid-December 1977. The rest of the cast couldn't figure out how he was still standing. By all accounts, the guy ran on 2 speeds, full throttle and unconscious. There was no in-between. Whatever downtime Belushi had in Oregon, he spent soaking up the local scene. He struck up a friendship with Eugene blues musician Curtis Salgado, who introduced him to the world of urban blues, a connection that would eventually help spark the creation of the Blues Brothers. Even off the clock, this man was building something. Meanwhile, SNL creator Lorne Michaels was watching his flagship show get stretched thin. When Dan Aykroyd was offered the role of D-Day, Michaels pushed back hard. Landis has said Michaels threatened to fire Aykroyd. Aykroyd's own telling was a bit more diplomatic. He said he chose to stay so as to not leave the show understaffed. Either way, Belushi got the pass and kept up the bi-coastal grind across a compressed 32-day shoot that would have flattened most people before the second week. Number 13, the guitar smash that made everyone flinch. The folk singer on the stairs wasn't some random background player. That was Stephen Bishop, a legitimate singer-songwriter whose hit On and On had cracked the Billboard Top 15, and friend of director John Landis, who'd already appeared in his previous film, The Kentucky Fried Movie. The staircase scene wasn't even in the original script. It got added during production, and Bishop ended up in the middle of it, strumming something gentle, bringing a little warmth to the party. Wrong house. Mid-strum, Belushi's Bluto walks over, grabs the guitar, smashes it against the wall, hands back what's left, and mutters, "Sorry."
Sorry.
The party continues. The folk era dies on a fraternity staircase. Bishop knew the guitar was going to get destroyed. What he didn't fully prepare for was Belushi coming at him full force. Bishop himself later confirmed it was still genuinely terrifying, even knowing what was coming. The crew had only 2 guitars for the scene, so there wasn't much room for error. They got it done in 2 takes, and Bishop kept the guitar from the second take, had the entire cast sign it, and still has it. The song he was playing? A 15th century English folk tune called "I Gave My Love a Cherry," also known as the Riddle Song. It wasn't chosen for its beauty. It was chosen because it was public domain. No licensing fees, no royalty headaches. Just free music that existed long enough to get obliterated by a guy in a toga. A souvenir from the 5 seconds of folk music that never stood a chance. Number 12. The gross-out moment that wasn't even planned. The cafeteria scene was shot in the University of Oregon's Student Union, a spot the students had named the Fishbowl. And director John Landis had been deliberately stripping Belushi's dialogue down to almost nothing. He didn't want Bluto delivering lines. He wanted a force of nature. Landis later described what he was going for as a cross between Harpo Marx and the Cookie Monster. Pure physical chaos with zero filter. So when Landis noticed Belushi piling his tray with an absurd amount of food between setups, he didn't ask questions. He told the camera crew to stay with him. What came next wasn't rehearsed, wasn't discussed, and wasn't anywhere near the shooting script. Belushi stuffed his cheeks with mashed potatoes, slammed both fists in the side of his face, and hit the table with, "I'm a zit, get it?" The reactions from the cast sitting across from him, not acting. They had no idea what was coming, and the genuine disgust on their faces made the whole thing land twice as hard. One improvised gag in a college cafeteria, and Belushi helped set the template for the gross-out comedy playbook. Every food gag and deliberately revolting set piece that followed in the decades after traces back to the guy who looked at a plate of mashed potatoes and saw an opportunity nobody else would have taken. Number 11. The night the cast became a real fraternity. John Landis didn't want his actors pretending to be fraternity brothers. He wanted them to actually feel like one. So before filming began, he brought the Delta actors out to Oregon about 5 days early. No rehearsals, no script work, just time together. During that week, a few of the actors got invited to a real fraternity party on campus. They assumed it had been cleared with the fraternity. It had not. Things went south fast. James Widows, the guy playing Hoover, threw a cup of beer at a group of drunk football players, and Tim Matheson later recalled the football team coming straight at him. Widows got his teeth knocked loose. Bruce McGill caught a black eye. Karen Allen screamed herself hoarse, trying to break the whole thing up. The next morning, a local student referred Widows to their dentist father, who patched him up before shooting got underway. Landis almost certainly didn't plan for a fistfight, but after that night, the brotherhood wasn't a performance anymore. Then the Omega actors arrived and walked straight into a freeze-out. Landis kept the two groups separated. No socializing, no shared meals. Kevin Bacon later said he could hear the Delta guys partying from his room at the same motel. Music, laughter, the whole thing. And he was never once invited. At one point, Mark Metcalf walked into a coffee shop where the Deltas were eating with the director, and Landis pointed at him and yelled, "It's Niedermeyer! Get him!" The Delta actors started throwing food and heckling. All off camera, all very real. So when the Omegas looked genuinely annoyed by every Delta in the room, a lot of that wasn't manufactured. Number 10. Kevin Bacon couldn't even get into his own premiere. Long before Footloose, long before the 6 Degrees game turned his name into a party trick, Kevin Bacon was a 20-year-old kid waiting tables and hoping somebody in Hollywood would notice he existed. He landed the role of Omega pledge Chip Diller after director John Landis told him to be smarmy. Bacon had no idea what the word meant, but he made a face that sounded like what smarmy should look like. Landis loved it. That was the whole audition. Then came the premiere. Times Square. Big night. Belushi rolls up in a limo. The cast spills out onto the red carpet, and Kevin Bacon takes the subway. He gets to the theater and ends up on the wrong side of the velvet rope. Another actor finally spotted him and waved him inside, but security checked his ticket, told him he had the wrong color for the good seats, and sent him to the back of the theater. Not even close to where the rest of the cast was sitting. As for the after party, Bacon has told the story 2 ways over the year. In one version, the only response he got was, "That's nice, where's Belushi?" In another, he couldn't convince anyone he was in the film, gave up, and took the subway back to his bar shift. His own words say it all. He called it one of the most depressing nights of his life, which makes it that much better knowing the guy who couldn't talk his way past a theater usher ended up becoming one of the most connected actors in Hollywood history. Number 9. The Deathmobile was basically indestructible. The Deathmobile started life as a Lincoln Continental. The car flounder's brother loans the Deltas is presented as a 1964, though the actual Deathmobile prop was reportedly built on a 1966 chassis. Either way, we're talking roughly 6,000 pounds of Detroit steel, built for an era when cars were designed to survive anything. John Landis needed it to look destroyed. The Lincoln did not cooperate. They crashed it, hit it, did everything they could. The steel just absorbed it. Landis himself later said the metal was so thick they had to bring in a skip loader just to bang the car up enough for the damage to register on camera. Then came the parade sequence. The crew built the Deathmobile into a parade float, complete with a turret, a skull-and-teeth grill, and a head taken from the statue of Faber College founder Emil Faber, all disguised under an Eat Me banner. It looked spectacular on screen and completely eliminated the driver's line of sight. The man behind the wheel was Bud Eakins, the legendary stuntman who doubled for Steve McQueen in the motorcycle jump in The Great Escape. Tim Matheson gravitated towards Eakins on set, and just before they rolled, Matheson asked him how he could see where he was going. Eakins' answer was straightforward: "I cannot see a thing." Matheson volunteered to ride along anyway. No cinematic reason to be there, he just wanted in. He later described it as hanging on for dear life. A 6,000-pound Lincoln tearing through a parade scene with zero visibility, and a stuntman who'd already made peace with the situation. Number 8. The movie that almost starred the entire SNL cast. In the early stages of Animal House, the casting wish list read like a Saturday Night Live roll call. Chevy Chase as Otter, Bill Murray as Boone, Dan Aykroyd as D-Day, Brian Doyle Murray as Hoover. It fell apart almost immediately. Of the original wish list, only Belushi was interested. Aykroyd passed, as we mentioned, and the rest moved on. Then there was Chevy Chase. Landis didn't want him, not because he was from SNL, but because he was already too big. Landis wanted unknowns. The studio disagreed and ordered Landis to hire him. So, Landis showed up to a lunch meeting with Chase and the producers and sabotaged the whole thing. He told Chase the film was a pure ensemble, no clear lead, and then pointed him toward foul play where he'd be the star, like being Cary Grant or Paul Newman. Producer Ivan Reitman was furiously kicking Landis under the table the entire time. Chase walked away from that lunch thinking Animal House was beneath him, which is exactly what Landis wanted. Chase later said he regretted not doing the film. So the roles went to actors like Peter Riegert, Bruce McGill, and Tim Matheson, faces audiences had never seen before. That ended up working in the film's favor. A cast built around a superstar would have made Animal House feel like a celebrity vehicle. A cast where nobody outshone anyone else made it feel like an actual fraternity. Quick pause. If you remember watching Animal House for the first time and immediately started quoting Bluto to anyone who'd listen, you're in the right place. Hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the rest. And drop a comment. What's the first Animal House line that comes to mind? We want to hear it. All right, get in line, pledges. Back to the chaos. Number 7. The spinoff nobody remembers that launched a superstar. ABC got a look at the box office numbers and rushed a TV version onto the air before the popcorn was cold. Delta House hit ABC in January 1979, barely 6 months after the movie became a phenomenon. Several original cast members came back, and they even kept the Blutarsky name alive by introducing Bluto's brother, Blotto. Everyone except the one person who actually made the whole thing work. The network filed down every sharp edge, layered a laugh track over single-camera footage, and turned an R-rated riot into something safe enough for the family hour. The show actually performed well in the ratings at first, but behind the scenes, the producers were in constant battles with ABC over content. After 13 episodes, they pulled the plug. But buried inside this forgettable spinoff were two names nobody was paying attention to yet. A 20-year-old Michelle Pfeiffer showed up in a role credited only as the Bombshell. Barely any dialogue, more background presence than breakout role.
Why, thanks, Robert. It's fun at Delta.
It wasn't her first screen credit. She'd already had a one-episode appearance on Fantasy Island in 1978, but it was one of her earliest footholds in Hollywood, and the beginning of a career that would eventually include Scarface, The Fabulous Baker Boys, and 3 Oscar nominations. And behind the camera, writing episodes, John Hughes. 4 of them, to be exact. He'd been a regular contributor to National Lampoon magazine and got upgraded to television scripts years before 16 Candles. Years before The Breakfast Club. In 1979, he was just a guy cranking out scripts for a sitcom that wasn't going to survive its fight with the network. Delta House didn't last, but it quietly gave 2 future legends their earliest footholds in Hollywood, which is more than most shows that actually get renewed can say. Number 6. The movie started as something way darker. Before Bluto Blutarsky became the patron saint of academic failure, Animal House went through several very different lives before it became the movie we know. The earliest version was called Laser Orgy Girls. Douglas Kenney and Harold Ramis wrote it together, a high school satire centered on a teenage Charles Manson. In their draft, the young Manson holds drug-fueled gatherings and indoctrinates girls into a cult that worships spaceships. That script hit a studio desk and died on contact. Probably for the best. Director John Landis read it and admitted it had some brilliant stuff, but called it too outrageous. The note from National Lampoon publisher Matty Simmons was even blunter, as Landis later recalled Simmons saying, "You can't have all this gang rape stuff. Put it in college." So the concept got aged up, the Manson angle got scrapped entirely, and the writers brought in Chris Miller, who'd been writing stories for National Lampoon based on his actual fraternity experience at Dartmouth. Miller's real-life stories gave the script the grounding it needed. There were a few more drafts and title changes along the way, but the core transformation was clear. Anarchic energy redirected into something an audience could root for instead of recoil from. The wild, unhinged spirit of those early drafts didn't disappear, though. It just found a new home. The cult leader became a fraternity brother. The extreme behavior became fraternity chaos. And all that authority-smashing energy got funneled into a guy in a stained sweatshirt who couldn't pass a single class, but somehow became the most beloved character in the movie. Number 5. The only college crazy enough to say yes. University after university read the Animal House script and said no. The University of Missouri actually gave consent. Then President Herbert W. Schooling read the script and pulled the plug. Smart call. Then there was the University of Oregon. President William Boyd had a decision weighing on him that had nothing to do with this script. Years earlier, as a senior administrator at UC Berkeley, he'd been part of a group that collectively turned down a request to film The Graduate on campus, and the movie ended up shooting at USC instead. That one stuck with him. A culturally significant film wanted his campus, and the answer had been no. So when Animal House came calling, Boyd took it seriously. He had his assistant, Muriel Jackson, read the script and report back. Her verdict? It was gross, but funny. Boyd consulted with student government leaders and the Pan-Hellenic Council. He wasn't thrilled with the material, but his previous experience tipped the scale. He said yes. Then he kept going. He gave the production access to the entire campus, including his own office, which became Dean Wormer's office in the film. The scene where a horse collapses in the dean's office? That was the real president's real office. Boyd handed over the keys and let him bring in a horse. The cost for access to a major university campus? A reported $20,000, with one condition written into the agreement. Don't identify the University of Oregon by name anywhere in the film. That part didn't exactly hold up. Today, the school is permanently welded to Animal House. At football games, fans still stand up at the end of the third quarter and sing Shout, turning the entire stadium into a toga party that William Boyd definitely did not envision when he handed over his office keys. He wanted to avoid missing another hit. He got a legacy he couldn't shake if he tried. Number 4. The movie was basically a true story. The writers weren't making Animal House up. They were remembering it. Bluto drew from multiple real guys the writers knew, including one fraternity brother who poured mustard on his own head and crawled around on the dance floor biting people at parties. That's not a screenwriter's imagination. That's a Tuesday at Dartmouth. Co-writers Chris Miller, Harold Ramis, and Douglas Kenny each brought their own college chaos to the script. Miller from Alpha Delta Phi at Dartmouth, Ramis from Zeta Beta Tau at Washington University in St. Louis, and Kenny from the Spree Club at Harvard. 3 schools worth of bad decisions rolled into one movie. The character of Pinto wasn't loosely inspired by someone. That was Chris Miller. Pinto was his actual fraternity pledge name between 1959 and 1963. He wrote himself into the movie. Literally. Miller even appeared on screen as a Delta brother named Hardbar, and Pinto wasn't the only real nickname in the script. Otto and Flounder were pulled straight from Miller's actual fraternity brothers at Dartmouth. And the name Animal House itself? According to Miller, the Alpha Delta Phi House earned that nickname after a failed attempt to chase down a chicken for dinner. An event that ended when an upperclassman known as The Man resolved the situation by plugging the bird with a .45 from his upstairs window. A fraternity that couldn't catch poultry. The writers didn't need to invent the chaos. They just had to write down what they'd already survived, which is either a testament to the creativity of American fraternity life or a serious argument against it. Number 3. The music took the joke seriously. The filmmakers didn't hire a comedy composer for Animal House. They hired Elmer Bernstein, the man behind the 10 Commandments, the Magnificent Seven, and To Kill a Mockingbird. Landis had grown up near Bernstein and befriended him through his children. Years later, he called in the connection, over the studio's objections, and gave Bernstein one core instruction. Score it like a drama. Treat every moment like it matters, even when what's happening on screen is objectively ridiculous. So, while the Deltas are demolishing a parade float, the score is surging like they're leading a cavalry charge. While Bluto is giving his big rallying speech, the one that makes zero logical sense, the music underneath it sounds like a general addressing his troops before the final battle. The orchestra is treating these guys like heroes. The audience is watching them destroy public property. That gap between what you're hearing and what you're seeing is where the comedy lives. The music doesn't announce the joke. It lets you figure that out on your own. The approach works so well that Bernstein became the go-to comedy composer almost overnight, going on to score Airplane, The Blues Brothers, Stripes, and Ghostbusters. Landis's technique of using dramatic music to make absurd comedy feel believable became the standard approach for film comedies that followed. Number 2. The fake band that became real. Otis Day and the Knights were never supposed to exist outside of Animal House. They were a fictional R&B group created for one purpose. Give the Deltas a reason to walk into the Dexter Lake Club and make a series of very poor decisions. But the guy performing on screen wasn't actually singing. Dwayne Jesse played Otis Day with all the swagger of a legitimate frontman, but the vocals on Shout and Shamalama Ding Dong belonged to a studio singer named Lloyd Williams. Jesse was lip-syncing the entire performance, and he was so convincing that nobody questioned it for years. Meanwhile, standing in the background holding a bass guitar, Robert Cray. No lines, no featured moments. He later told Guitar Player magazine the production needed black musicians to fill out the band, and he spent 3 days on set not actually playing a note. He went on to win 5 Grammys and become one of the most respected blues musicians of his generation. But in 1978, he was background dressing with a bass. Then Animal House exploded, and audiences didn't just quote the movie. They wanted the band. So Dwayne Jesse purchased the rights to the band name from Universal, assembled a real version of the Knights with some of his own family members, and took them on tour. Not a one-off novelty appearance. An actual touring band, playing 75 to 100 dates a year, performing Shout for crowds who wanted to relive a scene from a movie about fictional fraternity brothers at a fictional college. A fake band that outlasted most real ones. Number 1. The ending that broke all the rules. In 1973, American Graffiti pioneered the "Where Are They Now?" text epilogue. Earnest title cards telling you what happened to each character after the story ended. It was effective. It was sincere. And Animal House looked at it and decided to turn the whole thing into a joke. After the parade destruction, after the Deathmobile, after every authority figure in Faber College has been publicly humiliated, the film freezes on each character and tells you what happened to him. No wrap-up scene, no group hug, just title cards and fate. The filmmakers have openly acknowledged they were deliberately parodying American Graffiti's format. Same structure, completely different tone. And the fates are absurd. Bluto, the guy who achieved a 0.0 GPA and whose greatest academic contribution was a cafeteria mashed potato explosion, became a United States Senator. The most academically hopeless character in the entire film ends up in government. Meanwhile, the guys who played by the rules, the Omegas, the ones with the press shirts and superiority complexes, crash and burn across the board. Niedermeyer, the rigid military obsessive, gets killed by his own troops in Vietnam. Marmalade, the polished fraternity president, ends up as a White House aide and winds up in prison. The slobs win, the snobs lose. Every assumption about who is going to come out on top gets flipped in 30 seconds of freeze frames. And buried in there is one last inside joke most people miss. Pinto, the character based on co-writer Chris Miller, ends up as an editor at National Lampoon. The real guy wrote himself into the movie and then wrote himself into the ending almost exactly where he actually ended up. The film even tells audiences that Babs Jansen became a tour guide at Universal Studios and to ask for Babs. That gag bled into real life. Allegedly, fans showed up at the actual Universal Studios Hollywood asking for Babs, and for a while, doing so would actually get you a discount at admission. A throwaway credit joke that somehow became a real promotion. But the real legacy is the format itself. That Where Are They Now epilogue became one of the most copied endings in comedy. And if it feels familiar, it's because dozens of films have borrowed it ever since. American Graffiti introduced the concept. Animal House turned it into comedy, and the comedic version became the dominant form of the trope from that point forward. Animal House took someone else's format, flipped the tone completely, and turned a closing credits gag into a blueprint. And there you have it, 15 weird facts about Animal House. So which one caught you off guard? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with whoever you used to quote Bluto with. They probably need this trip back to Faber College as much as you did. Until next time, this is Remember When.